How you guys doing today? Romaine Neal here from Active Gourmet. We are excited to be partnering with Nickelbrook on this amazing beer and food pairing concept. We're going to be putting together a caramelized onion and spicy apple cornbread to pair with Nickelbrook's Head Stock IPA. The IPA is really nice from a citrus and pineapple standpoint. A little bit bitter, but the complement of the cornbread with a little bit of that sweetness from the apple and the onions are really gonna pair really nicely to this. So today we're gonna kind of walk through the basic concepts of putting together a really nice cornbread, okay? So what I wanna start with your basic cuts. So apple and onions are gonna be one of the staple ingredients in this. So we wanna make sure that you have a good understanding and concept of how to be able to break this down. I don't want anybody to lose any fingers. So we're gonna work on some good techniques. For the apples, all you're looking to do is break that apple down into a good size. You don't want it too big, but you also want to make sure that it's big enough that it's not going to overcook or go to mush as you're cutting. So I always recommend when you're doing a cornbread, you can either do a slice cut, which is going to be something basic. You want to keep your fingers nice and balanced, or you can look to be able to get a nice thin cut from the apples that is also going to give you an opportunity to be able to cook that apple quickly, and it's going to be the same size as your onions as you go along. So that apple, again, cut them into a half moon crescent and just thinly slice to be able to get that product right to what you're looking for. You can get that sliced off and get that put to the side. For your onions, you're going to look to be able to do the same thing as well. Your onions are going to be a sliced thin julienne. So you're gonna come over top and you're just gonna thinly slice that onion. And again, because you're gonna cook that onion down, you don't want it to be too thin, as you get an opportunity to be able to hold that onion together and then go from there, okay? Once you have your onion and your apple cut up, like we do here, the goal now becomes to caramelize and get those onions and apples to the right consistency that you're looking for. So we're gonna start with our 2 tablespoons of butter, and we're going to get our fire going on here. Now, with a cornbread recipe, we are going to use a cast iron, not only as our frying pan, which we're gonna caramelize our onions and our apples on today, but we're actually gonna use it as the actual container to bake our cornbread in. If you have another container, feel free, you don't have to commit to a cast iron. What it does is it gives that cornbread a really nice crust, and it also allows for that cornbread to be able to bake a little bit longer without having to worry about that cornbread burning, okay? So once we're in, we're gonna take half of our 2 tablespoons of butter. We're gonna get it into our cast iron skillet here, and we're gonna start with our onions. Now, the onions, what you're looking for from your onions is a nice golden brown. You're not looking to take them too far. You're just looking at a nice little golden brown so you get a little bit of caramelization and a little bit of flavor out of there. We have salt and pepper here, so don't be afraid of your salt and pepper, adding a little bit as you get started here. Our butter's nice and hot. Now that onion's going to be very nice. The onion's going to give us a nice little aroma. It's going to give off a little bit of fragrance, so we want to make sure that we're definitely complementing that flavor across the board. Now, it takes anywhere from around 10 to 15 minutes to caramelize the onions. So again, medium heat. You want to be nice and patient. You want to make sure you get that good color without burning them. If your onions burn, unfortunately your cornbread is not going to have that nice flavor that you want. So make sure you take your little time. Maybe go enjoy a little IPA while you are actually cooking it. Works out well in both cases. Now be careful as you're operating this, because that skillet's gonna get real nice and hot. Some people like to have a little bit of bite to their onions. Some people like to have that onions completely cooked down. It all depends on what you're looking for. All I want you to look for as you're doing this is you want a little bit of that fragrance. You should get a little sweet aroma from that onions. Once you are good to go, you should get to get the onions caramelized. You can transfer that back to your original container. Keep in mind, these are going to get cooked again within your cornbread, so you don't have to cook them too far in the original cook. You're just trying to get that fragrance going. In your same skillet, you're going to get the rest of your 2 tablespoons of butter, and we're gonna caramelize our apples. Now, our apples don't take anywhere near as much time as the caramelized onions do, so again, nice, low and slow. All you're looking to do is be able to get that nice little color caramelization on that apples, and then be able to go from there, okay? So, butter's melted out. Gonna hit our apples. Now, because we are doing a spicy apples in here, we do have a little 1/8 pinch of cayenne pepper. Now, the cayenne is meant to be able to offset the flavor between the spice and the sweet. So, some people like a little bit more spice, some people don't. You wanna add your cayenne right in there as soon as you're getting that apples caramelized. And again, you're not looking to take these guys too far. Just a nice little browning. Once you start to smell the apples, your fragrance is going to be exactly what you're looking for in order to be able to get them in with your cornbread. Now, as the recipe states, you do have 2 tablespoons of fresh thyme here. Now, the fresh thyme, I always recommend adding a little bit at the back end because you don't want it to lose the fragrance or the flavor of the thyme, but you also want to make sure that that heat gets to it so you can really get that flavor profile of that fresh thyme. Once that apple is caramelized and you haven't had too much of that IPA, get that set off and set aside as well. Now we're looking to be able to get that butter. Now we have 3/4 of a cup of butter here. That's going to really go in with our with the next steps of our cornbread. Now your ingredients are going as followed. Are going to be very, very important for you to remember. Your cornmeal, your flour, your butter, your salt and sugar are all going to go in at the same time. Now the one thing you want to make sure is that you don't have a lot of lumps in your cornbread. You want to make sure that you're really, really taking your time to be able to slowly ingratiate that butter in with the rest of your dry ingredients. I don't think your dad's going to be very, very happy if he looks around and it has a bunch of lumps in your cornbread, so please, please make sure that you take the time. No amount of IPA is going to make him forget that you gave him lumpy cornbread on Father's Day. So you want to make sure that that you take your time to be able to get that in there. Okay. Once your butter is melted out, all you're looking to do, you don't want that to burn because that flavor again is going to go into your cornbread. Now we're going to get our cornmeal, 5 tablespoons of sugar. We're going to get our 1 tablespoon of baking powder. So, butter is ready to go. We have our buttermilk ready to go as well, which is going to be our 1.5 cups of buttermilk. Now, you want to make sure you want to start with your buttermilk, be able to get that smooth incorporation, and then you finish off with your butter as you go, okay? So you're gonna grab yourself a nice whisk. And again, you don't wanna dump it all in, you wanna slowly ingratiate your buttermilk, so I'd recommend starting with half. Mixing in thoroughly. The purpose of not getting any lumps in this is that when it bakes, the cornmeal is gonna take a lot of that moisture, so you wanna make sure that you're avoiding any excess lumps that you may find. Once your buttermilk is fully incorporated, you want to slowly incorporate that butter as well. And again, much like our buttermilk, we're not going to incorporate all at the same time. Start with 1/4. Make sure that incorporation is smooth. You can see our base batter is very, very nice and smooth, not a lot of lumps to it. We want to make sure that is clean and ready to go. So you want to set that back aside there. Finish off the rest of your sugar component, just to make sure that balance is there. Now, once you have completed having the rest of your batter made, now it's time to be able to finish off our apples and our onions. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna get that skillet nice and hot, and we're going to ingratiate some of that wonderful IPA. We're gonna caramelize our apples and our onions, finish it off with a little bit of IPA. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get that skillet nice and hot, and we're going to actually reduce that IPA down, fold in our apples and our onions, and really be able to drive home all that flavor together for us. soon as we get our pan nice and hot, we're gonna get our IPA. So half a cup of that Nickelbrook IPA right in there. You can go ahead and hit it with your fresh thyme now. That thyme and that IPA is gonna give it a nice fragrance. So you can go ahead and get that in there now. And what you're gonna do, you're gonna look to be able to reduce that down by around halfway. Once it's reduced by half, you're gonna fold in the rest of your apples and your caramelized onions, and then you're gonna look to be able to cool that off, get that into your cornmeal batter, and then in the same skillet, you're gonna be able to get that batter right away. A couple things I wanna note when you are looking to do this, you wanna make sure you grease that skillet really nicely after. You don't want that cornbread to stick. As I said, Dad's not gonna be very happy if the back end of his cornbread is burned or it's not getting out of the pan. So you wanna make sure that you take the time to be able to grease that up. A little bit of butter, a little bit of oil, whatever you're looking to do, whatever you have on hand, really works in there. So if you don't have butter, some oil works, a little grease pan works, whatever you're looking to do, okay? So our IPA is almost reduced down by half. I'm gonna get my caramelized onions right back in there now. And what I wanna do is I wanna let that onion really soak up a little bit of that IPA flavor. As I said, there's a little bit of aroma of pineapples, there's a little bit citrus kind of blend to it. So if I really get that caramelization with the onions and the IPA together, I'm really gonna be able to fuse those flavors together and get a little bit of that on my cornbread as I'm ready to get that done. Okay? So the reason why I'm putting my onions first, they're a little bit stronger. They can hold up under the cooking. The apples are gonna fall apart a little bit quicker than the onions, so make sure you wanna start with your onions as you go, okay? You wanna be able to cook all the liquid out. You don't wanna leave a little too much liquid in this recipe as well, because if the liquid is left over, your cornbread is going to suffer. So you wanna cook all that liquid all the way down to be able to get the product that you are looking for. We're gonna fuse our apples back in there. And as you can see, we are almost out of that IPA liquid, so it's reducing down. It's really fusing really nicely with that caramelized onions. It smells absolutely amazing once you start to burn off some of that fragrance and that sweetness aroma starts to kick in. That fresh thyme's really being able to give us what we're looking for as well from a flavor profile. So all of this is really going to drive home exactly what we are looking for. This is something as well you can do an hour ahead. You can do this the night before, put this away, cool it off, and then add it to your mix as you're ready to go, okay? We're almost done here. Now, we do want to season the cornbread individually. So with the little touch, we did add a little bit of salt, but I always recommend you do want to season your caramelized onions and apple mixture as well, just to be able to have levels of flavor and to really be able to drive home what we're doing. So we're just gonna, a little pinch of salt and pepper goes absolutely a long way here. And some people like a little bit more salt and a little bit more pepper, so please use your discretion. You don't want to go too heavy on that set. So once we have cooked down all our IPA is now cooked out. Now we can take our mixture off the fire, and now our goal is to be able to cool that down. You want to have that at least 80 degrees Celsius, at least cool to that temperature before you incorporate it. We are going to have eggs in our cornmeal mixer, so we want to make sure that we're not overcooking our eggs. So this mixture definitely has to get cooled down beyond that point in order for us to be able to get not to mess up our actual batter. Okay? So we'll set that aside, let that cool down. We'll get our cast iron essentially greased up and ready for our cornbread to be able to go in there. And then once we do that, 400-degree oven for anywhere from around 30 to 40 minutes to be able to make sure that cornbread is exactly what you need. A really good trick to be able to finish off to see if it's done. Don't use your finger for this, but a little toothpick works. So you want to stick it right in the middle of your cornbread, and if that toothpick comes out completely clean, meaning that there's no wet batter, you can essentially run your finger on that toothpick and you got nothing on it. That means that your cornbread is going to be done. Okay? So we've taken our onions and our caramelized onions and apples to cool down all the way. Our batter's here set and ready to go. Our skillet has been greased. We have a little bit of butter that we've established on the base on the sides of it. You also want to make sure the sides of your skillet is as well. Even if you're not using a skillet, if you're using just a roasting pan or anything generic that you have in your kitchen, you want to make sure that you've applied enough butter across the surface area that you're going to be able to remove that cornbread from your skillet once it's done. Because trust me when I tell you, there's a lot of sugar in here, so you want to make sure that that's easily removed. Okay? So once you have had your mixer cool down, what you're now going to do is you're going to separate your mixer. So you're going to take half your mixer and you're going to fold it in to your batter. Now, the reason why we're only using half of our apple and onion mixer is that we want some of that to be ingratiated inside, but what we're also looking to do is we also want some of it on top. So we want to make sure that we have a really, really good separation of mixture inside, but also on top as well. Your egg is going to be the last ingredients that you want to be able to put into your mix. As I said, make sure everything is cooled down all the way. The last thing you want to do is have scrambled eggs with a side of cornbread as well. So you want to make sure that mixture is cooled down all the way. You want to crack your eggs into a secondary container. Never crack your egg directly. You might have a little cornbread with some extra shells on the side as well. All right, so you want to crack those in. One at a time. You just want to fold these guys in here. Again, just whisking that into our mix. The egg is going to give it a nice little fluffiness to it. It's going to give us a nice little rise as well. There's some natural fats in that egg that's going to complement the flavors that we already have here. If you don't want to use eggs in your mix, you have to find a way to be able to replace the fat. So anything like a sour cream, you could use, I've seen people use a little bit of whipping cream. Whatever alternative you want to do, you want to make sure that the fat is definitely being replaced in that recipe. Okay? So first egg is in. We got our second guy in here. Again, we just want to whip that completely incorporated, make sure we still have no lumps. If you do have a mixer at home, I recommend that you pull out one of these guys. If you are like me and your shoulder is not necessarily the best, you want to be able to make sure that you can get a good solid mix out of this batter. So your batter should have a little bit of malleability. It means it should not be too stiff and it shouldn't be too dry. What you're looking for is a good liquefied fat ingratiated batter. Once you are done, you are ready to go. So we will transfer our batter to our skillet. Once you've transferred it to the skillet, you want to let it sit for 2 or 3 minutes, make sure everything is even all the way across the board. And now comes for the final touch, the second part of your mixture, your apple and caramelized mixture. You're going to just lay generously across the top of your cornbread. Now you want to spread this out evenly. You don't want it to be too high. You want to get a good coverage on top of that. Please remember, you are going to be going into an oven, so these apples and onions will burn quickly if you don't catch that cornbread before that 30 or 40 minute time. So please, you want to make sure that you're getting that locked in. Once you have that sat and ready, you're ready to go in the oven. So again, this cornbread pairs really nicely with a Nickelbrook IPA. Really nice flavors, really not very hoppy beer, a little citrus, a little pineapple blend. With what we have here, we have a little bit of sweet, a little bit of earthy notes as well. So it's really going to complement what the beer provides you as well. We do have some of the beer ingratiated into the recipe, so that's also going to be something that definitely helps the pairing. But a little bit of that cornbread, a little bit of that IPA on a nice summer day is gonna go a long way. A nice little barbecue recipe for you guys to be able to put together. Okay, so 400-degree oven, 30 to 40 minutes. You wanna check that toothpick and then you're ready to go. So, Romaine back here with Access Gourmet, our wonderful spicy apple and caramelized onion cornbread is out of the oven, ready to go here. So what we want to do is we want to just be able to slice that guy and ready to get that set. I do recommend after it comes out of the oven, letting it sit for anywhere from around 45 minutes to an hour. My dentures can't handle all that heat. We also want to make sure that the cornbread has an opportunity for everything to set in, and it cuts a little bit easier. It won't crumble on you, and you also have an opportunity to be able to set them apart. So we have our beautiful cornbread here. As you can see, our nice crust is on the outside from that cast iron skillet. Our toppings are really kind of caramelized nicely on top as well. Again, we haven't allowed them to stay too long and burn, so we have a nice little pace to get to them. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna get this guy sliced off. Because we let that cornbread sit for a little while, it really has set very nicely here. Again, if you are having a nice barbecue in the backyard, nice little get together with family, this is a very, very easy dish and something that you can put together, leave overnight. When your family comes over, crank a beer out, get some nice, beautiful, sweet-tasting cornbread, some wonderful, nice IPA from Nickelbrook, and then you have a really nice pairing to go. Okay?